Hello and welcome to another episode of BoxTrick. I am your host, Matt Brady, known on the internet as Super Games Bros, joined today by Age of Retro. Kyle, how are we doing today, man?
We're doing great. Doing great. So far, so good. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, this is great for me because I feel like when I kind of started TikTok and kind of diving into it, you were actually one of the channels that I sort of saw like early on, and then we had kind of been interacting, and I've popped into some of your live streams and some other, you've popped into some of mine and chatted and stuff like that. And so I was like, I really want to talk to this guy in a podcast because I feel like we have a lot to talk about in terms of games and everything. It'll be super fun. And I feel like your channel really saw some big growth this past year, man, when you were live streaming backyard baseball.
Yes. Of all things, something I have zero to no nostalgia for, ironically.
Yeah.
I don't have any background with that game whatsoever.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of interesting because I felt like there was like a wave of people doing it, and you were one of the first people I saw doing it. And then I just feel like a bunch of people saw it because the more I thought about it, I was like, man, that is honestly such a genius game to play because a lot of people have nostalgia for it. And it's one of those things where people are going to see it in the live stream because TikTok, the way it pushes it out, where just everyone gets fed the content, it's like the perfect kind of thing is where you're scrolling along and then, oh, dude, backyard baseball. And then everybody sort of has ties to all the characters. And, obviously Pablo Sanchez is like, he's like 2004 Michael Vick in Madden, level character, just like super powerful and everything. So, yeah, I mean, I think you I saw you posting doing that, and I saw you got a lot of growth from that.
I did. I really kind of started the social media thing for Age of Retro really to kind of help people connect with nostalgia that they might have had. Yeah. So I was being a hypocrite with something like backyard baseball because I didn't have any connection to that game, but that's other people's nostalgia. So I'm like, all right, let me check it out, and I learned so much about that game from the community and people just. And I couldn't believe the amount of energy that game brought to my account, and just people loved it. I had no idea it would do that,
Yeah, it's great. And I think it's actually, I don't know if you were part of this or you, and there's another guy too, the guy you played
Squid Legs.
I saw him doing it too. And it just got re-released on Steam.
Yeah.
It just got released on Steam. And I saw a while ago, I guess, that like Travis and Jason Kelsey we're trying to buy like the intellectual rights to it. And I haven't seen anything else, but maybe they did.
They did.
So they did acquire it. Oh, okay.
They did. And they're re-releasing some media, I guess, a movie, some shows, and a new game. So
yeah, it's great. And then, it's awesome. And it is really one of those perfect games, I think, for streaming, just because a lot of people have nostalgia for it. Every time Pablo comes up to bat, everyone is like, oh my God.
They freak out. They freak out.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna give this a shot and just see what happens. And I got like four people watching. I was like, okay, because I was live streaming like Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah,
which is a similar thing. I think a lot of people have nostalgia for the original, but yeah, I think that is kind of the thing, especially with like retro games on TikTok. Is I think your best way to go in terms of growth is to kind of go like one of two routes. Do something that people are like super nostalgic for, or do something that people were like, oh, what is this?
Right.
Yeah. Right. Where maybe they like don't know exactly what it is, or it's something that enough people kind of know that there's people talking about. Cause I feel like live streaming on TikTok is just it's like the wild, wild west. Who knows? Like it's either going to hit or it's not.
That's a good way to put it. I never intended it to do that. I always tried to play those offbeat games that people, I don't know if they've forgotten or they just don't know about. You see a lot of the staples with Zelda or Metroid or whatever it is. A lot of people play a lot of similar games on TikTok, but I always tried to go down the paths of things that just weren't seen a lot on TikTok, and I thought Backyard is one of them. I never expected it to hit. I'm like, oh, I'll play Final Fantasy Tactics. That'll be the game.
Yeah.
No one shows up.
Yep.
You never know. You have no idea.
Yeah, because I was playing like Metroid Prime Remastered, and I was like, "Oh, this might be cool." Because people were like, "Oh, it's and like nothing." And then I tried NBA Jam,
Mhm.
which not enough people play because
Oh, I love it. I love
I'm
it.
a diehard NBA Jam. I that game I had like sort of a renaissance with it this year, and I think it was partly because backyard baseball. You were playing backyard baseball, and I was like, what are some other like cool sports games? So I tried NBA Jam, and my favorite one is actually I the PS3 Wii, like
I
that the one they remade like a while back.
On Fire Edition.
Yeah, it was
Oh my god.
it's so good, and it's a shame that that franchise. I don't know, like it's a
I could
that and
like
the Street series. I just don't understand why
Street's
they
big
bring it
too.
back. Yeah.
Street's big. But I could pick up that 360 era On
Mhm.
Fire Edition NBA Jam today, and it plays perfectly. It's so much fun to play with friends. Like that's a tournament game like you set up on the couch with friends and play.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, to me, it just seems like you could print money. I know they tried to redo it with like the NBA playgrounds, which I played a little bit of, and it was sort of okay. But man, especially that like, yeah, I had it for the Wii, and then they released it on Xbox 360 and PS3 as well. But yeah, that era. I mean, I think if you just ported that game today with like current rosters, playing as
Mhm.
LeBron and you know
Be
Kawhi,
huge.
it'd
Huge.
be huge. And I don't know what the licensing is for it or
We should
you
get
know
it. We
we
should do it.
should. What do
Yeah.
we have to do to get the
Yeah.
NBA Jam
Let us
license
know.
and get it go? There is a cool game on Steam called Basketball Classics, which is a little bit kind of like that. And I pick it up every now and then, and it obviously just uses like it doesn't use like real licensed rosters or anything like that, but it's pretty cool, and it's really much more. It's a little bit more like sort of the Tecmo Super Basketball and
Gotcha.
oh god, was the double dribble,
Yep.
stuff like stuff like that. Yeah. Well, cool. All right, man. Well, behind you is a pretty enormous video game collection, and that's one of the things I think your channel is sort of known for. So I thought I dive into a little bit about like collecting, what you like to collect for, open box versus loose cartridge, all that stuff. So I guess, how did you start collecting?
I'd say right around I don't know what time frame this is, but right around when Hollywood Studios or no, Hollywood Video, sorry.
Yeah.
When Hollywood Video was going out of business.
Okay.
They had an attachment called Game Crazy. If you ever go into the store, it's usually on the side. So there was a Game Crazy connected, and they were starting to close because the retro thing was just not working out for them, and Hollywood Video was starting to close down. So they were clearing out all their games, just tons of NES, SNES, PlayStation 1, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just jump in. These things are like $5, 250. Super Metroid was like $10. I just bought everything I could at that time because people are just losing interest with it. They were always chasing the new thing, and that's when I started really kind of collecting. I was like trying to figure out what I was collecting at that time. I didn't really know how to narrow down my obsession, I guess, because I was getting into things like Vectrex and 3DO and stuff I had no nostalgia for. I had no business collecting that stuff. I didn't know anything about it. It's still fun and cool, but I'm not AVGN. I'm not gonna just
Right.
amass this gigantic library of games. So more recently over the past few years, I've been kind of consolidating those kind of systems and expanding the ones I really have like nostalgia and love for.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was around 2010. I just looked it up, and
Yeah.
that's roughly around the same time I started getting into collecting as well. I remember when it was right when a little like a couple years later when the Wii U was coming out, and I was like, man, I was looking back and thinking, because I got the Wii at launch, absolutely freaking loved it. Smash
Same.
Brawl and all this stuff.
Same.
And then I basically didn't touch it for like 5 years. And I remember when the Wii U was coming out, I was like looking back at my Wii collection, and I was kind of like, man, I feel like I didn't even like I missed out on this entire console lifespan.
Mhm.
And so oddly, that was kind of the system I first started collecting for, and then kind of grew kind of grew out of that. So you started with like NES, Super Nintendo, basically just anything and everything.
Yeah, and I was very much into just Nintendo at the time. I was total Sega snob. I'm
Yeah.
a victim of the console wars.
So
Die
you
hard
were so
Nintendo.
you grew up as a Sega kid, or you grew up as a Nintendo kid?
Nintendo,
Okay.
yeah. So I was like, I'm not gonna collect Sega, whatever. So I'd get them at yard sales or whatever. I remember buying like a massive collection of Sega, and it was like a like 50 games in box, a Genesis with the 32X, with the Sega CD, some Sega CD. I got it all for like $50, like this crazy dream deal. And I'm like, I'll just throw it on eBay. I don't really care
Oh
about
no.
this. Yeah. And I'm like looking back now, like, you fool. What have you
Yeah.
done? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, nice. Okay. So wait, was it the side CD or was it the bottom CD?
It was the bottom. No, it's the one on the
This,
side.
so
Yeah, the
okay, so
side
the
one.
Sega Genesis 2
Yep.
with the side
Yep.
CD. Yeah, because it was the top one, man. Ooh, that's
Oh
the
yeah.
top
No,
and
no,
bottom.
no. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, yeah. 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 I mean, it is crazy how like retro gaming, man. I mean, now I'm looking at some of the games in my collection and I'm like, maybe I should sell this.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, but what are you gonna get with it?
yeah, I
More
know.
other games?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, yeah, the other games. So okay, so what is your largest collection?
Um, I'd probably say it's a toss up between SNES or NES.
Yeah,
I probably have the most boxed NES,
yeah.
but that SNES collection, I do have to pride myself. I
You
love it.
cherish
Yeah,
it more.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
okay.
do.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Okay.
do.
So now do you specifically do you buy cart and then you try to track down the box? Do you do repo boxes? I mean, or do you just I only want complete in box or
When
how
Yeah, when I during those Hollywood days, I'd say I was not into boxed stuff, but if I saw it boxed, I'd get it. And I started getting into plastic cases and printing out my own labels
Yep.
and trying to do that just to have something on the shelf. And I'm like, these boxes are probably going to be too much money. At the time, they were nothing. It was like five, ten
Right.
bucks a box. But even then, that was like too expensive. Going to school, trying to do some, busyness with life, and um, eventually, I started getting more into the boxes. So if it was loose, if it was in box, it didn't matter at the time. Eventually, I started phasing out of those plastic cases, getting more of the boxes because they were, nothing. People are just throwing them away. You'd find them at like a electronic boutique in Babbage's when they started clearing out. I was just buying them loose, like even empty boxes. They were just getting rid of, and I'd just be buying them up. So I didn't amass a lot of this collection over the past 5 years. Really, I
Right.
haven't. It's been probably 10, 15 years I've been doing this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of I will say that is a little bit of my like a version of like Nintendo collecting is I guess I just don't really care about the box
Really?
like that much. And actually it's almost like if I see they have a cart version or a version that's complete in box, I'm pretty much going to go with the cart instead. And it's only because they use those cardboard boxes that are so fragile. On the other side, if it's Genesis, then I'm like, all right, well, it's got the plastic case. It's like
Yeah.
it keeps up better. I'm much more willing to do. I mean, thankfully, there are a lot of options, like you said, where you can print off your own covers. And I used to have the website here on my computer where you can like print off like if you want different regions or alternative
Yep.
art or stuff like that. There's a lot of that stuff in the community, which is really really cool. But like N64, like I don't even care about the box. Which yeah, that's actually what I'm about to start going back into video game collecting for is the N64 specifically just because analog just is.
Right.
I did did you pre-order or no?
I did not. We can talk about why, but I did
Yeah.
not.
Okay. Well, why not? Why did?
Um, I feel like I'm a bit of a snob and purist when it comes to just playing off CRT.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll ever. I think filters and scan lines, whatever, all the customization in the world, it's there. I think it's great. However, people can play it. However
Yeah.
you can do it, play. That's really what I care about. However, there's nothing like firing up a CRT
Yeah.
and connecting and I say I'm a purist, but my N64 is modded, so it can do RGB. It's got SCART cables, so it connects to my PVM. Um, but just being able to play on original, that glow, that sound of firing up a TV, you just can't replicate that. That's the nostalgia that I chase. And the same thing with those game boxes. Back to that last point. Uh, the thing that drew me into those game boxes was you'd go to a rental store, you'd go to a video game store, you go to Toys R Us, you're looking at those packages, trying to understand what that game is. And that even VHS, like going to the movie section, looking at the freaky horror covers, like that stuff drew me in. And those movies are largely terrible, right? They're probably terrible, but they had the coolest box art.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the stuff that just I'm like, that's a lot of the nostalgia too for me, is just looking at the box art. There's just beautiful artwork on them, and they're just pieces of art, really, for me. So um I know that's
Nice,
so
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
We're back now.
So I pre-ordered it mainly because the N64 is similar to the Wii. Although now it's kind of switched around, and I am like I'm like, you can't get much more hardcore Nintendo. Where it's like I basically didn't even play like the PS4 generation because I mean I did, but once the Switch came out, I was like I just hardcore into the Switch. But I got the 64 at the very end of its life cycle. And I got like GoldenEye and Smash Brothers. My neighbors had it, so I had played it and stuff like that. But that's like the one console where it's like, oh man, I would really love to go like deep diving and collecting into that library. One, because it's also small and it's relatively,
Right.
But I think N64 now that there are other controller options, even though I never really had a problem with the original N64 controller. I know a lot of people do, but things like the Retro Fighters controller and stuff like that, which I have is for the Switch, is absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
I think that it's just I don't know. I'm so glad that they're doing it. And I was like, all right, this is the one I want to buy. Now, are they going to come out with a million new colors? Like I bought the black one. I was like, I don't know, because they didn't do it with any of the other things. But looking at what they've done with the Pocket, right, and they just do like a new edition every day. Are they going to come out with a fire orange to
Right.
look just like my actual my N64? That's sort of the one. And I will also say the 64, even in emulation, which I do a lot of emulation, is that one system, because it's just where like emulation, it's good and you can play it, but it just always feel like it just feels off.
Yeah,
I don't know how
There's
to
always
describe
something
it.
wrong with it. There's always something wrong with it if you don't download a full package, and it's not ever going to look right.
The N64 is like the one system with emulation where I'm always like, something just doesn't, it never quite feels right. Like Dreamcast and all the other stuff, all the other systems, PlayStation, they all feel fine whenever I play it, but I don't know what it is. But N64, I'm like, something just feels off. And I even have used like an actual N64, you plug in through all the different things, and I don't know what it is. Something to me, it just doesn't seem right. So I am interested in getting that. But real quick, you did talk about getting a CRT, because that is something I'm looking into doing, is getting a CRT. Do you think it's better for people to just go get a CRT TV? Should they go into the route of like getting a monitor? What do you think is like because CRT is now, it's like everyone wants them.
Right.
And I feel like if I wait, I'm going to be spending like $1,000 to $2,000 for like an old CRT TV.
Yeah. I think it depends ultimately. I started off with just whatever CRT I can get my hands on to start off. And once I started getting more into it, I was connecting to just composite and then component, and HD Retrovision has their own upgraded just wires to kind of connect to these things. So I was like, then I started getting into like pure RGB. And then I started to research like, monitors and SCART. Yeah. So then ultimately this bad boy here is a Sony Trinitron 2030 PVM, and it's pure pixel. Like it's just
Top it's a TV, not a monitor, right?
Yeah, it's a TV.
Yeah,
ultimately. But I actually drove like 3.5 hours to pick it up because of this this guy that used to work in somewhere in New Hampshire at a college, somewhere up next to Manchester. He listed on eBay for like 1,000, and I talked him down during COVID. I'm like, hey, what can we do?
Yeah.
So I drove up, and they didn't use it much. It's fairly new. It was in a lab that they had, some media lab that was just sitting there for years and years and years. And I worked out a deal, and now all the systems I have here are SCART connected. They're true RGB, even that modded N64. I have a switcher for each SCART cable, so anytime I turn on one of these bad boys, it automatically switches. So I got Super Nintendo on this one, later gen, so like GameCube, Xbox. I'll just change a little bit definition on that other one. So that's why I have two.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Well, okay. So it'll do 480p.
Yeah, the other one does.
The
Yeah,
other one
this
does
one does 480i, and that's like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, Super Nintendo, NES, Genesis, Saturn, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I gotta pull the trigger at some point here soon and just get the just go get the CRT to do it all on. I actually watched this video of people running their Steam Deck into it and being like, oh, it's actually like an amazing experience, because like, the Steam Deck 720p is really what you're kind of looking for gaming wise, at least like current modern stuff. They're like, but you can dial it down to 480 and you can play everything at ultra, and it's like, okay, well, yeah. So I was like, that does seem like like an interesting. It is shocking to me that I feel like there's enough people beginning to be like, hey, CRTs are like becoming there's a demand for it. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder if at some point somebody's just gonna like step in and be like, all right, we're gonna do like a small batch or something and just start selling CRTs again.
You've seen I don't know if you've seen Alien Romulus.
Let me see here. Let me look this.
The movie. They just announced they're going to be releasing that in VHS.
Okay.
Right. Do you want to watch that on a 4K television, or do you want to watch that on a CRT in a VCR?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's definitely I think that's going to be a big thing coming up, is that you're going to see like the vinyl releases. I think that's what a VHS is now. You're going to see VHS releases to kind of scratch that nostalgia itch. And I think people are going to start, I don't know, like there's a finite amount of TVs, and I imagine a lot of them are in junkyards and just pits somewhere with the Atari, 2600 and ET somewhere in Nevada, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have access to get to one. Like in my dad's house, I have my old 27-inch Sanyo. Yeah. I mean, I could easily just go get that,
but it's a hole. It's a hole. I'm telling you right now, it's a hole, because you're going to be like, man, how do I get multiple systems hooked up? Because I'm tired of changing the cords. And then how do I get the best pixel out of this TV? Oh, I can't. Now I need to get another TV. It's a hole.
Yeah, I can't do. That's like me with monitors in the first place. Like, because now I guess this summer I bought an ultra wide. Now I'm like an ultra wide snob.
Yeah.
Where it's like
I've lived that life. I've lived that life, my friend.
Like I bought I literally because I'm mostly a Mac user, and I have my ROG Ally, and I was like using it for whenever I wanted to play some games on Windows or whatever. And then I was like, all right, well, man, I feel like do I buy a laptop? Do I buy something else? So I've literally bought the XG Mobile 4090 for my ROG Ally, and now I can play anything. Yeah, I was like, I just went as overboard as you possibly could.
All right. Well, be careful with the CRT thing then. If you're gonna go overboard, you could do it there too.
Yeah, that could definitely be a problem. I feel like maybe like a CRT monitor though, I think is maybe more what I'm looking for, but who knows,
Yeah.
Just to really experience something into its full glory. So, okay. So I remember a while back you and I were I was talking on one of your live streams about like game pickups and stuff like that, and you said, hey, I don't even like try to pick up new games because I think you're just like, I'm still back in like 2022 playing playing games. So I mean, what have you picked up recently?
Like brand new games,
or retro collecting or whatever.
Okay. Really, the only thing I collect for physically anymore is Switch. So I actually just got this in today. Actually,
Oh, I saw your post about that today. Yeah.
this actually I got in today. This I got
Oh,
in yesterday.
all the dark forces. Yeah,
Dark
yeah,
Forces yesterday, but I got Turok 3 today from Limited Run. I never played it on the 64. I assume it was for 64. But I still collect physically for Nintendo because of the console wars. Don't forget,
yeah.
ride or die.
I'm a Nintendo shareholder, so
Oh, wow.
I'm yeah, like that's when I said I'm all in on Nintendo, I mean it. I'm like, you can't go more all in than that.
Yeah, that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
I really want to get into the Star Wars Outlaw game,
Hmm.
but that backlog,
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time getting something new
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I that guilt. I don't know what it is. I just finished Hogwarts Legacy. I had probably 3 or 4 hours left in that story, and I started it when it came out, and I probably put 80 hours into it, and I never finished it. And then finally, I finished it like a couple of weeks ago. Red Dead Redemption was another one. I picked it up for Switch. I thought it was great on the Switch. I probably put 50 or 60 hours in. Never finished it.
But
I went back.
you'd played it originally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But I'm sick of abandoning games, and I've never really picked them back up. So this picking them back up where I left off thing is new, and it's great. I I I, I just checked 2 off over the past month, so that's great.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I think like PlayStation has sort of ruined a lot of playing games for me because of the trophy system,
Mhm.
and then I really have a hard time picking a game up. I really have a hard time playing a game where I don't like on Switch. Like if I can play it because I bought a PS5 last year, and now I'm always like, even though Switch is my preferred thing, and it's because I can play it on the couch, and I have a baby, so
Right.
it's like easy. I can take it to work, and I can play on breaks and stuff like there, and on slow days I can actually just play at my desk when there's like nothing, not a whole lot going on. But it's still just like, man, it's that achievement thing that's tied to it, where it feels like your progression is really there, right? Even though it's like I'm playing the game. So that's one of my hopes for Switch 2 is that they come up with some kind of achievement
Mhm.
system or something. They kind of did a little bit with the Wii U, if you remember. They had like that sticker
Oh,
system
yeah.
where you could play games and unlock stickers in them and stuff like that. I feel like that would be such a good idea. So that way there's some kind of tie to it.
Yeah. I chased achievements on 360 pretty hard. I never really got into it on PlayStation. I didn't really care about their system because at that time it was PS3, and I'm not a huge PS3 generation guy
Yeah.
for some reason. I just think it was a weak system, powerful system, but weak. Some weak games. I think I was
Yeah.
more into 360 at the time.
Same. Yeah, I got the 360 and then the PS3 I bought the PS3 like a couple of weeks before the PS4 came out. Cuz same thing. I was like, all right, well, I'll dive into the PS3 because at that I think like that generation, like the PS3 and 360, so many games were
Mhm.
the same game on both systems. Where that's really kind of the first time that happened a lot. Like you did see it a little bit in like the PS2, GameCube, Xbox, era and stuff like that. But those systems were really all kind of different where like okay like the GameCube was a little more powerful but didn't have as good as memory or didn't have the disc size that some of the other systems had, so like the Xbox was actually kind of the definitive way to play games, stuff like that. But like the 360 PS3, they were like pretty much exactly like it's going to be exactly the same experience for third party, so I
Mhm.
never really feel like I missed out on a lot except for like those handful of exclusives like Metal Gear Solid 4, which I had played on a buddy's PS3 like when it first came out. So really I was like, all right, it's like Uncharted and like The Last of Us. And then I did get those. I
Actually,
did get those to play those and they were amazing. But I never it wasn't like the same as with the Wii where I felt like I was missing out on games.
yeah.
Whereas like the PS3, I was like, it's okay.
I actually have an interesting story about Guns of the Patriots.
Yeah.
I didn't have the PS3 because I just thought it was weak, and I was 360 guy. Because I felt like at that time you had to pick a side. Still, now you have everything, right? At PS5, Switch, PC. But at the time, I didn't have a PS3, and I really, really wanted to play Metal Gear. I'm a big Metal Gear fan,
Yeah.
So my cousin had one, and I'm like, "Hey, can I just borrow your PS3 for a week or two so I can rent this game and then just play it?" So I rented it, uh, just grinded on the game, and I actually was getting married on. I was leaving for my destination cruise wedding that weekend, and I remember play, and I wasn't done with the game, and I remember trying to finish the game before I had to return the rental, and I probably finished around 2 a.m. and we were leaving to Florida at 6 a.m. and I dropped off. I finished the game, watched the 12-hour
Right.
cutscenes,
Yeah.
and then I dropped the game off at the Dropbox, right, for Blockbuster, and it was like a photo finish. But I just I don't that's like something that no one could experience today.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just
Yeah.
like a fun game memory that I have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Metal Gear Solid 4 for me is the one that, I mean, obviously, that's what this podcast is sort of, in reference to,
Mhm.
is Metal Gear. But yeah, it's the one. It's 4. I mean, it's one of those franchises where it's kind of like Zelda, where it's like you could argue that every game is the best game in the series. But
Mhm.
4 is the one that I like play go back and play the least, just because the cutscenes are just like
Oh,
so,
it's very long.
so long. Yeah, I mean,
It's a
like,
commitment.
yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's great. I think they'll probably include it. I think if they do like another collection, which they just said that collection last or earlier this year, or end of last year or whatever, they did that collection where they had like Metal Gear Solid 3 and 2 and 1. But I would have to imagine if they do another one of those collections, that Metal Gear Solid 4 will finally get off of PlayStation.
That'd be great.
Yeah, because 4. I mean, 4 is amazing, and it's just a franchise where you could argue every game is the. I think 5 is my favorite in that
Five
franchise.
is your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, 2 is the one I've played the most. I mean, like, 2 is the reason I got a PlayStation 2, and I played 2 like a million times. It's probably the game outside of, like, if you count like Madden and sports games,
Wow.
that I have probably played more than any game ever. It's probably Metal
I've
Gear Solid
never
2.
met anyone like you.
I have.
I've never met like a diehard fan of 2 or
Oh
5.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love both of them.
I am a diehard fan of 1 and 3.
Yeah, I mean, 3 is, if I had to pick the best, I would say it's 3. I mean, I think start to finish, 3 is probably the best game in the franchise. But
Yep.
yeah, 2. Yeah, 1 is because I played 2. I played like a little bit of 1, but I never like played it straight through when it came out originally on PlayStation. So when 2 came out, I played it like over and over and over again, because it was like, you're a kid and it's like one of your
Right.
first games on PlayStation. I can't go out and buy games. So I played 2 probably like, I mean, literally, I have probably beaten that game over 50 times.
Wow.
Like start to finish. Like, I would every weekend, I would just like come home, school and everything. I would just blitz through Metal Gear Solid 2.
I did it once. I took the day off of work. I picked up my pre-order from GameStop or Electronic Boutique, whatever it was at the time, and I played it from start to finish. It was probably like a 13-hour playthrough, and I put it in the case, and I said, "I'm never playing this again," which
Yeah.
is probably a lie. I
Yeah.
feel like I need to go back in and play it again, but I was just so the gameplay mechanics are amazing, but I was just so confused and just like, why did he pursue this direction for this game?
Yeah.
When he
Oh,
gets towards
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
end, I'm like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is he doing? He's just
Yeah.
wild at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. No, I can get that. I would say 2 is probably, out of the Metal Gear Solid games, if you want to include the Metal Gear games too, but I would say out of Metal Gear Solid 1 through 5, if you want to include Peace Walker or whatever, I would say 2 is probably the least favorite of people's games. 5 I love, just because I don't know, I got really into the base building and going into people's bases and stuff like that, and that whole aspect of it. And I like that it's open world. And I don't know, it's just one of those games also where I feel like in the past decade, I feel like games just haven't been gripping me as much. Like there haven't been as many games where I'm just like, wow, I'm ready to like sink so hard into this. And for me, a lot of times it is like open world action adventure, like Zelda Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom didn't do it for me as much as I thought it would. But like Arkham Knight, like Metal Gear Solid 5, and probably, yeah.
The Arkham series is so good.
So good. Yeah, it's a travesty what they did with Suicide Squad. Kills it.
Like, I didn't even go near it.
Yeah, no, it's like a shame that's part of the part of the franchise. Okay. So another question I want to ask you is there any game that you have found in collecting that you like didn't play as a kid, but now you have like a strong attachment to? Is
Great question. It's playing right now. I don't know if you can see it.
that a
Oh,
Link
you
to the
can't.
Past?
No, it's Earthbound.
Earthbound, okay.
Earthbound was one of those games that I felt like the Super Nintendo generation was dying, and it was coming to the end of the life cycle. And PS1 and other systems are starting to ramp up, N64, and that's when Earthbound came out. Just a very awkward time for the system, and I never. It just looked goofy. It just looked really dumb. The advertising for it, it was just the scratch and sniff, and it was just weird. I'm like, this is too kiddie. I'm an adult gamer. I'm into like Metal
Yeah.
Gear and stuff. Um, but when they did the SNES Classic release and they had Earthbound on it, I gave it. I got it past that initial wave that RPGs experience, which is like the first hour or
Right.
two. Once you get over that initial wave, um, I was sucked in, and I I don't know if I would have appreciated that game in my youth
Yeah.
because it's a I don't know if you've played it. It's a coming of age kind of story about a kid and him kind of growing up a little bit, and I don't think I would have had the same appreciation that I got as an adult as I would have as a kid, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's such, I have not played Earthbound, other than just like a little bit here and there, but I've never like really dove in and played it hardcore. I know that, that was Earthbound was sort of the first game I remember collecting wise being the game where everyone's like, oh, this is like expensive and rare and hard to find and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
It
I know
is.
you do have the big box of it.
I do. It's I think that overshadows it a little bit, and I don't like that about it, is that it's so expensive and so rare that I feel like it's prevented a lot of people from experiencing it. So I'm glad that it was on the SNES, and I know it's on the Switch now. Um, but if you have the opportunity and you can make it over that initial wave, give it a try. It's
Yeah,
just a beautiful, beautiful game.
yeah,
Some of the best music. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful game.
it has the one thing that sort of rubs me the wrong way with RPGs, and the Dragon Quest games are like this,
Oh,
and where you don't see your characters, you
yeah.
just see like the enemy and you're attacking. I don't know what it is, but I just have such a hard time. I
Mhm.
don't know why. It makes no
Yeah, I
sense.
agree. I agree. That's
But
really one of the first ones I've played like that.
yeah, Fantasy Stars like that, and I think some of the later ones on Genesis, you could see your character, and then Dragon Quest 8, I know obviously did that, but yeah, I don't know why it is, but I'm just always like, it just kind of rubs me
Yeah.
the wrong way, or sort of just like takes me out of it like a little
Mhm.
bit or whatever. But yeah, no, I'm definitely willing to give it a try at some point. It is certainly on my list. But for me, a game like that was actually was like F-Zero Legend, the one for the Game Boy Advance. There's like GP Legend and stuff like that.
Okay.
I was putting together a list of games, like a top 100 list to make for YouTube of like best Game Boy Advance games, and I started playing it, and I remember being like, wow, like this is a game that I would have like loved as a kid. I would have just been like, I could like envision myself in my basement on my Game Boy Advance, like just like plowing into it and stuff like that. And so that's why I want to ask you that question, because that's something that I've really been having a lot of fun with recently, is like trying out just other like retro, like going back to retro games and trying to play games that I obviously never played as a kid. And like in the past couple of years, one of what arguably might even be like my favorite game ever at this point is like Wave Race, like
Wow.
64, which is another
Yeah.
reason I'm really excited for the N64 thing, because I was like,
Yeah.
I never played Wave Race because I got the N64 late. And so I don't know why, but man, I'm just like addicted to that game. So as soon as it
It's
hit
fun.
Switch,
It's so
as
much
soon as
fun.
it hit Switch, I was like, yes, because I played Wave Race. What is the Blue Storm for the
Mhm.
GameCube when it came out. And I was like, this is cool, but it's not the same.
No.
It's yeah, it's totally missing the like 90s aesthetic, like the soundtrack and the
Yeah.
colors and
Nothing
everything that
beats that
Wave Race.
intro. Nothing
Oh,
beats
it's
the
so
intro.
good.
Yeah.
You can ride around on a dolphin. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to collect for the N64. I do have Wave Race on 64, but it's one of the reasons I'm really excited. So Yeah. Okay. How do you organize your game collection?
Good question.
And how do you keep track of what you have and what
Yes,
you yeah.
I use price charting on the app or on
Mhm.
their web based experience. I find it pretty good. I don't really care for the pricing. It's not why I'm into it. I'm not into it for the value. It's a good way to organize your games. It's helpful if you do want to sell something because it gives you that aggregate eBay sale or other sales. But when it comes to physically how I organize the room, it's changed over the years. But what live streaming has actually kind of changed the way I organize the room. So if I've done those streams where it's just me hanging out in the room and people start calling out games, I'm just an oaf. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so I have it alphabetized now. It's by section. So like, where am I? Here we go. I got Super Nintendo, NES, Genesis. It's generational for the most part. Where like, this is the 16-bit generation. This is the 8-bit generation. It's very much a Nintendo generation over here. So mostly alphabetized so I can find those games. It's just easier that way. I used to have it broken up. I don't even know what the hell system I had before, but it was just like cool games together.
Right.
All the black box NES games go together because that's a cool set to have.
Right.
RPGs, whatever it is, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, for me, like one of the things is I remember like when on my GameCube collection, I was like, well, is it going to be alphabetized? But then it's like, well, then I go by alphabetized by series, and then it needs to be like series in chronological
Yep.
order, right? Because it's like, well, like Resident Evil Zero came out after Resident Evil, like, but Resident Evil Zero has to go in the beginning because that's the first game in. So it kind of just like is what makes sense to me, I
Mhm.
suppose, and that's just sort of the way, I organized it. But there's always everything in that collection that throws everything off, like the new Super Mario Brothers Wii game that's like the
Right.
one red Wii game, and everything else is white.
Yep. Those big boxes don't help either. They're just in the middle. Just they're
Yeah,
featured. So
yeah. Do you have a lot of collector's editions, or do you not? You don't typically
um
go for those.
I don't typically go for those. There's only a few like really Switch. Some of the Switch ones I go for, but they're just kind of up top somewhere in the Switch section. So I never really get into the collector's edition or the statues, or any of that stuff. Uh,
Yeah, you have a lot of
game.
figures though. I can see.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's all Ninja Turtles and
Oh, okay, yeah,
Transformers and stuff like that. That action figure nostalgia that I have. So.
yeah. And I've seen you have a lot of Star Wars stuff and some skateboards. Your X-Men skateboard looks really cool.
Oh yeah, it's rad. They
Yeah,
I think that's Huff. Huff released like a blind bag situation, so it's like almost like getting a pack of cards. So when you open up the bag, you have no idea what you're gonna get out of
yeah,
that X-Men series. So it could be just a regular print, hollow foil, which is based on what that cover of the that it was, and then there's another gold one. And actually, the one I got is the one I wanted, so I lucked out. But I love the aspect of chasing blind packs of
yeah.
cards or
You just
collectibles
get
like
what you
that.
get.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've gotten recently. I've gotten into Funko Pop collecting, and that's
That's a
you
whole.
can't see it now because I have a lot of the lights off, but like that entire shelf behind me is games, but there's like hundreds of Funko Pops just like sitting in front of them. Because Funko Pops for me is a problem because they all look the same.
Mhm.
Where it's like, oh, okay, I could just grab, but they still all match together,
Right,
even if they
right.
like are totally different. Yeah, so now it's I have I cannot buy one under $10, or I can't buy one over $10. Just
Gotcha.
like can't do it, or it would be a problem.
Yeah, pop is never one of those things I get into. I love them. I think they're really cool. I love the way they execute some of the designs for those things. But I felt like it's just a pit,
Yeah.
just a giant pit because
Hmm.
there's everything. It's every
Yeah.
IP ever in the history of
Yeah, I
anything.
I try to have only like one of intellectual, like, oh, like, something like one intellectual property or something like that. But yeah, I really, it's like mostly Dragon Ball. It's mostly Batman. But it's like
Nice.
and then like a little bit of Dragon Ball and like a random assortment of other things. Probably Star Wars is probably my third biggest. But
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about do you try to keep games sealed or you just want to play everything?
No sealed.
No sealed.
I'm not about that life. I don't
Yeah.
like grading. I grade cards. I'm very much into card collecting. Um, but grading games, toys, no. Those things got to be out. They got to be out on the shelf. That's just me. I don't want them sealed. I got to play them. So
Yeah. Yeah, for
never
me
really do it.
it's all about access to games is where I'm kind of at with like collecting and things like that too, where it's like, okay, well, if I have access to a game and I can play it, then I guess I don't necessarily feel the need to buy it unless it's like, something I don't own. Like if I go to, I have a local game store, like literally like within like 2 feet of me.
Mhm.
Um, it's just like literally on the other side of the street. And so, every time I go in there, it's like, all right, well, it's like I don't own this on this or, whatever. But it's like if I already own it, like if I own, like, say, a game on PlayStation 2, I don't necessarily need that game on GameCube.
Yep,
Is
I agree.
kind of is yeah, kind of where I'm at it. Unless there's a couple examples. So like I bought the Marvel vs. Capcom collection that just came out
Mhm.
on I bought it on Steam digitally, but I am going to buy it physically on Switch. Just because I want to own it physically on Switch, and I'm also a Capcom investor, so it's like paying myself back, I
That's
guess.
right.
Yeah,
That's a good way to do it. That's a
yeah.
good way to do it.
It's like Nintendo and Capcom games and Sega, like totally different. That's
Basically free, right?
it is. Yeah, I get dividends. They pay
That's,
me.
that's free.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a total different ball game for those companies. But all the other stuff, then it's like, all right, a little bit here, here and more there. So it sort of changes. So, okay. I thought this would be kind of fun way to kind of maybe kind of round out and to begin to close out here. If someone is looking into, we can say go Super Nintendo, so that's sort of your go-to system. If you were to come up with maybe like a game, maybe like you don't have to dive into why every game is great or anything, but maybe like 10 to 15 games that you feel like somebody who's getting into the Super Nintendo library for the first time, what would you recommend they go for? It
Mhm.
could be like you could consider price or any of that stuff, or just sort of like just games in general. Where should people go if they're looking to dive into the Super Nintendo for say the first time? Because there's probably a lot of younger kids looking back at some of these games being like, hey, where should I go? What would you recommend?
Number one, Super Mario World. It's a staple. It's my favorite game of all time. It's my favorite Mario game. I love all of them, right? But Super Mario World's the one.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's
there,
probably the most balanced Mario game out ever created.
yeah,
It's
and I would say the version to look out for is the All Stars plus Super
yes,
Mario World. If
yes.
you
If
can,
you
if
if
you
you
can, if you can find that like sort of holy grail, then yeah, dive right into.
exactly, so you get 2 for 1 on that one. All Stars is great too. If you haven't been able to kind of play the older NES versions, it's a great pickup. Castlevania 4, some of the hardest hitting music that you'll ever hear in a video game. It's very cool. It's really, I always felt like it's a remake of 1,
Yeah,
but it's 4, right? Um, I could say Final Fantasy 3. I don't know if I'd recommend it. It's a tough game to kind of pick up. It's a tough one to for some to kind of get through. So I don't know if I'd recommend it. It depends on your appetite for RPGs. If you're looking for like a little softer, obviously Chrono Trigger. That's
yeah,
the way to go. It's more well-rounded, I think, than Final Fantasy 3. Earthbound for the reasons I said earlier, because price is not an object here. Um, I always love Mario Paint because it's a unique game. You'll never play a game like it, and if you can get the mouse and the mat for it, it's a fun
it's worth
little
it.
game.
It's worth it just for the sound editor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's some of those noises can be a little creepy, but mostly just making music, painting. It's therapeutic. It's a
hmm
therapeutic game, and it's just fun. Um, there's a trilogy that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. This kind of crosses across. a few generations. So like Game Boy, NES, and Super Nintendo, the Gargoyles Quest. It's
Mm,
just a great little trilogy of games that go across many consoles and generations of Nintendo, and it's a beautiful game too. Mega Man X, which I think is the definitive Mega Man game. It's probably my favorite. It's a great, just a great game to jump into. Um, think I don't know how many is that, like 7 or 8.
yeah.
Um, RPG wise, Secret of Mana is a great game. Illusion of Gaia, great game. Um, not Wayne's World.
No,
Don't
no.
don't 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 pick up Wayne's World. Just leave it there if you see it on the shelf. Earthworm Jim. Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's
I'm sure
that's
there's
okay.
yeah.
That's okay. I got
I'm
oh,
sure there's
I got some I'll throw. So at least my go-to Super Nintendo games, I think my main go-to is SimCity. I think
Mhm.
The Super Nintendo version of SimCity is
Great choice.
one of the most underrated games ever.
Yeah.
'Cause I just love that version because one, you get Bowser as like
Oh
Godzilla
yeah.
disaster, which is great,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's just so chill. I mean, that might be the first cozy game ever.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, now cozy gaming is a thing, but man, I love that. That's probably my most played Super Nintendo game. Rock and Roll Racers is up there.
Very
They
good.
actually redid that a little bit ago with like a Blizzard arcade collection,
Did they?
and yeah, it's actually a really sick version of it
Oh
too
wow.
because
I didn't know that.
they put in the actual songs.
Oh
So they
cool.
went out and licensed the actual music, and it's kind of that like HD, 2D kind of graphics or whatever. They have like HD layers and stuff over it, but you can still play like you actually get all the versions of it. So you can
Oh
actually
cool.
play like the Genesis sounds or the Super Nintendo or whatever. So it's really cool. And it also has like Lost Vikings and some other game on there. I always forget what it is, but you get the
Yeah, I was
whole
gonna
collection.
say you have to hear the 16-bit version, and I
Oh, it's
imagine
so
the
good.
the Genesis version is like rubbing
It's
rocks on
and
your
it's
ears.
yeah,
Would sound
it's not.
awful.
Yeah, the Genesis version of that game. That's definitely one of those games that's just not as good on Sega, unfortunately. But obviously, Turtles in Time.
Oh,
Although
great.
I am a Hyperstone Heist purist, growing up as
Ooh.
a Sega kid, I think
Okay.
I like Hyperstone Heist more. I think just gameplay wise, it's better. But Turtles in Time is absolutely fantastic. Star Fox is up there. I think a lot of people would say the Donkey Kong series. I just never could get into it as
Play one.
much. Yeah,
Play through
just
one.
yeah, just not my go-to. And then Batman Returns, the Super
Mm,
Nintendo.
very good game.
It's an excellent game. It's way better than the Genesis version, but it's a very like fun beat 'em up. You can literally just pick enemies up and throw them against the wall. It's like you very much feel like Batman.
Yeah. It's a fantastic game. One of my Christmas games that I got as a kid that just
Yeah.
played the hell out of.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that Turtles in Time pick is that I think Turtles in Time is a better pick overall that you could recommend to someone. Where
Yeah.
Hyperstone Heist, the level of difficulty between those two
Right.
games is like not even remotely the same.
Yeah.
I feel like Hyperstone Heist is such a harder game than Turtles in Time.
I
And
feel like I struggle more with Turtles in Time than I do
really?
Yeah,
Oh wow.
I kind of think the opposite. Actually,
Wow.
I think Turtles in Time is harder than Hyperstone
Oh,
Heist.
interesting. Maybe I'm
It's
just used to it.
because yeah, I think it is. I think it's just totally which one you play because in Turtles in Time, your hitbox is smaller, so you have to get closer to the enemies. I
Mhm.
feel like and maybe that's just
And I always
personal
picked
preference.
Raph. I always picked
Yeah,
Raph. I was a savage. I wanted to
yeah.
be right in. So
Yeah. So I don't know. So maybe, but yeah, I grew up a Genesis kid. I did have a Super Nintendo, and then I don't know what happened. Something happened to where suddenly didn't have a Super Nintendo for some reason. But it was like Super Mario World, Star Fox, Street Fighter 2. Oh yeah, Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers. I mean,
yep.
that's like that the sheer amount of hours I played on that. And my brother and I literally would play back and forth. And I remind him to this day that he owes me $1 million because we bet on it. We bet on it. That he's like, I'm going to beat you. And and literally since, we were like little kids, to this day, I'm like, well, you still owe me $1 million
You just
for
got to tally.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
Just tacking it up. But yeah. And, a lot of those games we just mentioned, a lot of those are available via other things, or you can play them on the Switch. A lot of those are
That's true.
on the Switch. themselves. I've never seen the like second Super Nintendo ever. You know, like the refresh of
The
it.
top is it? Yeah, it's a top loader too,
It's a
right?
top loader.
Obviously, but
Yeah.
it's the purple button one.
Yeah, I've never even
Yeah, I've
seen
never
that in
seen.
person.
Well, they're both purple buttons, but it's got like a rounded purple button, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've
Yeah.
never seen that one either. I
Yeah.
don't know who the hell had that one.
I don't know. I've literally never even seen one.
I don't know
And
that
I
kid.
and I go to like gaming expos, and I feel like I've never
I've
even
never
seen
seen
one.
one in the wild.
Never seen one.
Top
So
loader and yes, all the time, but never.
yeah. Analog did make a Super Nintendo. I was kind of considering getting that, but now it's like you can't even find it.
No, I never. I got the Pocket, and I think it's the best way to experience Game Boy or GBA.
Yeah, you do like it, the Pocket?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is the screen that good?
it is.
It
Yeah,
is.
the fact that it's a little bit bigger and the backlighting, it's just perfect.
Yeah, because
Perfect.
I have the Miu Mini, which is fun. That's obviously just emulation,
Mhm.
but I have considered the Pocket just because I was like, well, I could play like actual physical like Game Boy Advance
Yep,
games and stuff
it's
like
great.
that. And yeah, the screen on it is supposed to be really really good.
It is.
Yeah.
No
Do you
doubt
what
about it.
what color is yours?
I was one of the first pre-orders, so I have the black one.
Oh, you said the black one. Do you have the dock?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
And you use the dock?
I do. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's great. I got some flash cards for it because it's just a pain in the ass to get some Game
Yeah.
Boy games, and they're all over the place, right?
Yeah.
They're back there somewhere in the abyss. But
Yeah. Oh, there we go. The Super Game Boy. That was one of the ways.
Yeah, yeah.
That was actually like, so I played a lot of Super Game Boy as a kid. I just had a Super Game Boy, and then like I played a lot of that. So I played Pokemon,
I
and
think it's
some
a great way
games
to
will
see
give
some
you
of
the
those.
cool little border.
That's right. You get the exclusive border plus the color, like there's like a color system that you can get with each game that's unique to the
Yeah.
game. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Sick. Okay. All right, man. Well, hey, this has been absolutely a ton of fun. Been wanting to chat with you for a while about games and stuff like that. Certainly we'll have to have you back on, and we can, talk about PlayStation or, tons of systems.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot more to talk about. So where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me specifically at TikTok. I don't dabble with Twitch that much, but I'm there. YouTube, Age of Retro, and Instagram. Those are really the main ones that I kind of interact with. I'm trying to expand to my YouTube. Give me a reason to. But mostly, if you wanna see some cool stuff, check out TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, with that, as always, I want to thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.